Thanks for coming this morning on a Saturday morning and sharing your time with us. So we have a great day lined up. If you guys haven't, seen the, hopefully most of you have been on the Eventbrite. So we'll have a class after this about beauty and hair, and Hannah's going to talk about all the secrets of natural beauty, which I'm really excited about. Then from 11 to 1, we're going to have kind of a social hour with lots of food, and we're going to have chair massages and opportunity to use some of our therapies, which are pretty amazing. The IMRS and the lymphatic machine is pretty awesome. My husband will probably at some point talk about those. And then some afternoon classes about breast health, giving you guys some alternatives to mammograms that are really healthy and that actually are early detection, that are not painful. And so some really good stuff today. So thanks for joining us. We're real excited to just really want to bless you guys today and make it about you guys. So it's all about the ladies today, which is fun. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and get started. And Lord, I'm just going to pray to just start the event because I just feel like it's such a blessing to have everybody here today. So Lord, we just invite your presence. We thank you for each and every woman that's been able to come out this morning and share their time with us. And we just invite you, Jesus, to come and just to be glorified. We thank you for our bodies and how you've made us and how you've designed us to be just intricately beautiful. And we trust your design, Lord, and we ask for the answers, that you would unveil the answers to us as we seek you for our health and for our wellness, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. So today I'm talking about pelvic floor health because I think this is kind of a topic that, we might talk about in some circles privately, but it's not really like a real big topic that we hear about, and we're not educated, and our mothers probably didn't tell us. It's like you have to find somebody to talk about this stuff with, right? Because it's kind of weird. It's like you don't want to tell someone that you're having urine leakage or that you feel heavy in that area, or something, and you're like, something's not right. Who do I talk to? And so I just really have a passion about it because for me personally, pelvic floor health was not a concern of mine, but once I had my first child, it was a big concern because I was, in my 30s and I thought I was pretty healthy. And then within like 2 weeks of having my child, I just couldn't handle this heaviness and this pressure. And like, I just waiting for it to bounce back, and I'm like, something's not right. And I had been trained as a physical therapist in 2007. I graduated from Duke University with my physical therapy degree. And, I'd been working with bodies my whole life, pretty much because I was an athletic trainer before that and an athlete. And I kind of hit this wall where it's like, I need to dig into this a little bit more because personally, I'm just kind of in a place where I'm not comfortable anymore in my body. And so it was really concerning to me. So really, I just took my knowledge of physical therapy. And then at that point, I was also certified in Pilates and my knowledge of Pilates. And I just started digging and I just started really putting pieces together. And I felt like some people had some of the pieces, but maybe not the whole piece. And not to say that I have the whole piece either this morning, but I'm going to share with you what's worked for me and what I've learned, because I feel like, a lot of us are potentially having some of those issues. And I just hope that, today you can take home something that really, resonates with you and gives you either answers for maybe your issues or a vision for how to keep yourself healthy if you haven't had any issues in that area, because it's an important part of our body. It's who we are, it's how we're wired. God gave us this amazing female body and we want to love it and cherish it and be thankful for it and not feel like it's failing on us. And so, all right, so we're just gonna start with the anatomy of the pelvis. And I meant to have my, I'll be right back, sorry. I meant to have my skeleton. I'm a very visual person. The women's pelvis is a little different from the males. Obviously, it's got some important jobs to do that are different from, the man. So we have a little wider pelvis, but most of the bony anatomy and things are the same. It's just they're shaped slightly different. So we have basically this is your right and your left hip. Other fancy name would be innominate, and that's just kind of a fancy term. They connect in the front with your pubic symphysis, and then they connect in the back with your sacrum. So there's two halves to your pelvis, and I think of it kind of sometimes like a bucket. And when we get into the class part, I'll often refer to your bucket staying upright and holding water, because if your bucket is tipping one way or the other and your water's pouring out, there's potential that you're not in a good alignment for your pelvis. Hey, good morning, Josh. Come on through. You can check in here and we'll get you a map. So bones are typically connected by ligaments. Ligaments connect bone to bone, but this is a really neat part of the body because not only is it connected by ligaments, but the muscles and the tendons create also the support to the anatomy. So when you are pregnant and your baby's growing and the pelvis is stretching, it's held together not just by the ligaments, but the muscles themselves are contracting to contain all of the organs within inside. So in your pelvis, you're gonna have your bladder, and you're gonna have obviously some of the more intimate organs like the colon, other things like that. So the pelvis is really important for maintaining the position of all of those organs in the body. So we're gonna just talk through the muscular anatomy as well. The pelvic floor, so the pelvic floor is the inferior part of the pelvis. And the pelvic floor, for some of us, we might think, when you hear pelvic floor, you might be thinking Kegels. That's kind of like the traditional, like, do your Kegels 100 a day. You're like, that sounds terrible. It's like a death sentence, right? You're like, no, please, no Kegels. Well, that is only part of the story. Kegels do not, honestly, they can be helpful in some situations, but honestly, if they're done incorrectly, they can actually cause more problems than good. So we're going to talk about that. So you have two real kind of types of muscles or areas of musculature in your pelvic floor. You have a superficial layer and then you have a deeper layer. So the superficial layer is more of your figure eight. And it's going to be basically around the urethra and around the colon, your anus area, and that's going to create the contractions to hold your urine in, to relax and let stool out. So that figure eight, that area, including some of the perineum, is what I consider your superficial layer, okay? And most of the superficial layer is involuntary control, meaning we can squeeze it and we can feel it, right? There's another layer underneath that, which is the deeper layer. And the deeper layer is actually super important, and I feel like has been the focus of what I've done and a lot of my work, and that has made a huge difference in my recovery. And so think of the deep layer more like a fan. And it's actually a fan that kind of spans from the sides and the tip of the coccyx, and it basically creates almost like two hammocks. Can you imagine a hammock in your mind? And so the hammocks are running along the base. And so when the baby comes out, the hammocks kind of swing away. The baby can, when everything should hopefully come back together very nicely. So the two layers function very differently. So when you want to tone your deeper layer, if you contract and you squeeze, you're really mostly just contracting the superficial layer of that figure eight. If you want to tone and target the deeper layer, what you actually have to do is you have to lift the coccyx part away from the pelvis. And what that does is it elongates the hammock. So when you wanted to tighten up your hammock, you didn't like come over to the hammock and like lift up the middle, right? You didn't like squinch it up and lift it. No, you went to where the hammock was attached and you pull on the ropes. And what does the hammock do? It lifts beautifully, right? So that's what we want to think about when we're thinking about toning the pelvic floor, is actually accessing both, not just the superficial layer, but the deep layer as well. And we're going to get into that as we get into our class, and you guys will start to see how that all works together. So the functions of the pelvic floor, we talk about, just the basics of the pelvic floor. What does it do? It helps us maintain our urine, the continence of our urine and our stool. It provides an opportunity to give childbirth. It allows the baby to come out. It makes us, we're a sexual being. We have, allows for sexual activity. And then also, this is the other thing I think I mentioned earlier, is that it supports the abdominal and pelvic organs. And so what it does is it creates basically like a support system to the whole dynamic of your intra-abdominal area. And so the entire intra-abdominal area sometimes is referred to as your core. Everybody's kind of heard that term thrown around. Your core is kind of like, train your core. It's a real hip term right now, I guess. So you're like, what is my core, right? So let's go down to the next part here. So I'm just gonna give you a brief, very rudimentary description of the core, but it basically is defined by the area between your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is underneath the base of your ribs, and it basically is like a dome. And then the inferior part of your core is the pelvic floor. And so the two are basically both a diaphragm, so to speak. This is your pelvic diaphragm. This is your diaphragm and your rib cage. And they should be working together. And that's another key component that I found that I wasn't doing. I wasn't coordinating my pelvic diaphragm with my upper diaphragm. We'll get into that some more. Anteriorly, the front of the core is the transverse abdominis. We have a few layers of abdominals in the front. We have the one that we're most familiar with probably is your rectus abdominis, which is your six-pack type of abdominals. It's the one that, when you're crunching or lifting your head up, you really feel that working. That is, your kind of standard abdominal work. But then we also have the obliques underneath that. And then we have something called the transverse abdominis. And that is actually, I think of more like a corset. So if you've ever imagined like the ladies who, wore those poofy dresses and they were like getting cinched up, that's actually the kind of direction and work that your transverse abdominis does. Okay, it actually cinches the waist and kind of creates a little bit of a squeeze when it needs to increase abdominal pressure to help support the organs. In the lower part of the back and the posterior part is something called your multifidi, and it's just some deep, very deep lumbar muscles, and they also are very important for your spinal health and just keeping nice stability in the body. All right, so all of these work together. When one of these components is off, it actually can affect all the other areas. Because ideally, Sarah, would you mind grabbing me one of those balls that's like kind of soft, the gray ones that are a little bit soft? So ideally, this area here should maintain equal pressure on all sides. And so if you have something like a ball, and she's gonna grab me a ball here, perfect. So I like to think that the abdominal area could be like a ball, and the intra-abdominal pressure, it should always be equal on all sides. If something comes down and pushes here, my lower hand feels the pressure intensely. Can you guys see that? So if I'm doing something up here in my upper diaphragm, that's going to affect my pelvic diaphragm. Can you guys see that pressure? So if I do something here in the front that's over excessive, then the back starts to feel it too. So ideally what should happen is when we do need to contract, which we do oftentimes, you don't just hang your belly out when you lift your couch, right? You don't just, you need some intra-abdominal support there. You're going to see all of them work together and contract together and maintain abdominal pressure so that one area is not taking the load excessively over the other. Because repeatedly, time after time after time, if we do that, eventually that one area may get weak if it's not being supported enough and it's not being trained. So that's just kind of a visual that hopefully gives you guys, because I'm real visual, I like analogies, so hopefully that gives a little bit of understanding. Okay, so signs of pelvic floor dysfunction. I think everybody can kind of, probably maybe relate to one of these. We have the incontinence, which is, either an urgency or a leakage. Sometimes after you use the restroom, you may feel like, gosh, I just feel like it's not all coming out. Maybe your bowels aren't, really eliminating, or when you pee, you're like, I just peed and I feel like there's something still in there. Sometimes that can happen when the bladder is not in good alignment and it's actually hanging in a place where it's not lifted up and able to dump completely out. Sometimes you can feel a bulging sensation, which would be like a prolapse. That's common for women who maybe have either had a baby recently or later on in life. We often, women do go through a hormonal change where we lose estrogen and we lose, progesterone. And some of those like hormone changes can affect our muscle tone and different things. And we just start feeling like we aren't as strong. And so we need to be supporting our hormone changes as we age. Painful elimination or painful sexual activity, that is often, a complaint when things are tense or toned. So we talked about how if pressure's up top too much, then the bottom is holding, a lot of pressure. Sometimes that can create actually a hypertonicity in the pelvic floor where it's constantly contracted because it's having to bear the pressure of something that's abnormal. Low back pain, that again could be an issue because the multifidi is overworked and it's not being supported. And so the low back starts to take up a lot of extra work than it should be. Also just a fear of lifting or movements of impact, who's like wants to run with their kids or jump with their kids. They're like, not sure I should do this right now, And granted, there's seasons of recovery after baby or different times where you want to be cautious, but we shouldn't be limited in our activities, well into our 60s and 70s. I feel like I want to be running with my kids, and I want to be as active as possible. All right. So some of the reasons for pelvic floor dysfunction, sometimes if we have, a traumatic birth, like if you had to use some type of intervention during your labor, whether it was forceps or maybe there was, an incision or something happened during the labor that you didn't foresee or didn't want, but the pelvic floor kind of went through a pretty traumatic experience and so it was overstretched, or so that could be, a reason for pelvic floor dysfunction. Weak connective tissues from poor diet and hormone health. And that's kind of what I was referring to with age, taking care of our hormones. But also we can experience that even in our young age. If we're not eating well, your pelvic floor is a muscle and muscles need certain things to, stay strong. And especially all the connective tissue. So all the ligaments and the tendons are considered connective tissue. And that's really important. Connective tissue requires certain things to stay healthy and strong. So the collagen matrix within the connective tissue, we have calcium and we have all types of other deep amino acids and things. And if those things aren't being supplied to the body and the body can't recover, with time, we're going to see those connective tissues start to weaken. Another issue that I find for pelvic floor dysfunction is just overall just a complete unawareness of how to keep our body in good alignment. So we might have postures that we've developed because of our technology. We sit at desks like this all day, right? Or we're on the phone and we're like, so we have these like slouched postures and then we go to stand up and it's like, are we actually getting back to neutral? Are we getting back to being upright? Are we just kind of still in that, like our body's training to a new normal because we're in these unhealthy postures all day long? So I just have 4 steps to improving pelvic floor health. And these are, I'm sure there's probably others, but these are just the ones that I've done and I feel like are the biggies for me. So understanding alignment, and we're gonna really talk about that in the class today. We're talking about the alignment of the head, over the ribs, over the pelvis. We're gonna talk about how that relates to the bladder, and I'll show you that on the skeleton here and the colon. And I think Pilates is an amazing tool for that because to me, you can exercise, but are you aware of how you're exercising? And the connection of your mind and body is so important. And that has been such a blessing for me with Pilates is that I've learned about my body and I've become so aware of how my body's moving that I'm able to prevent injury. And if I do have an injury for some reason, something happens, things happen, I'm able to recover so much faster. I think chiropractic's also very helpful because sometimes we have structural things that can be improved on, and then also myofascial techniques. So if, massage therapists, I'm all about that stuff. And combining it all together can really be important. And if you are having real intense issues, there are physical therapists that do work internally and do help, release tone and help facilitate muscle contractions and different things. So know that I'm not one of them, but I know that we could probably connect you. We could start looking in Kansas City if you haven't found one. Understanding breathing. Like I talked about before, you have 2 diaphragms and they have to work together. So we're gonna really talk about that in our class and how those coordinate. Inhalation and exhalation. So those are the 2 extremes, the deep inhalation and the deep exhalation. That right there can be a pelvic floor exercise. How crazy is that, right? If done properly. So we'll get into that as well. Understanding movement. We're going to learn today about the transverse abdominis and the pelvic floor, and we want to improve our core stability, spinal mobility. All of this is going to help the body work and function together and keep all the 4 parts participating in unity. The last one is understanding nutrition. And honestly, I have to say that that was the cherry on top for me. So, you know, I was new mom, trying to do all the stuff, do all the right things physically. And, you know, then I had a second child, and I actually have three now, but, you know, I've gone through 3 pregnancies, and each time I've kind of have to get back to square one, because, you know, after childbirth, your pelvic floor opens again. And so for me, I've always had to like be conscious, okay, I'm gonna do my work, and then I noticed this last time, I was so diligent on the nutritional aspect, I was shocked at how fast I improved, shocked. And here I am, I'm in it, I live it. I wake up to Vaughn every day, you know, like he's my like little birdie in my ear. And I'm trying to do the right stuff, but like, did I really reach out and like ask Vaughn for like, what supplements can I do to partner with this recovery? Like not just like the prenatals and the hormone balancers, like what can I take to make my tissues get stronger faster? And I did that this time, and I was shocked. I was just like, okay, I think I got faster twice as fast as I did the last 2 times. So I just want to encourage you. I have some things here, and we can talk about those after, or if you find any of the staff, they're super knowledgeable about how to help your body recover from any connective tissue disorder or any connective tissue weakness. So it's like you take some of this stuff that are natural, and it's not going to just go to your pelvic floor because that's where you want it to go. It's going to benefit your hair. It's going to benefit your skin, your nails, your knee cartilage. I mean, so you're getting like, you know, so much benefit from doing those things. It's not just like for that one thing, you're going to get like 100 great benefit side effects. You know, we call them side benefits here. And instead of, you don't get side effects with God's stuff, you get side benefits, right? So that's what we like to joke about. All right, so let's get started. Let's have everybody just laying on your back. So we're going to have you on your back with your knees bent. Your knees are going to be pointing to the ceiling, and let's imagine that you have a grapefruit, okay? And that grapefruit is in between your knees, and that same shape, that same width between your knees is also going to be between your ankles. All right? Your hands can just be to your sides for the moment. You can close your eyes if that helps you just to relax. And what we're going to do is we're going to just start with our breathing exercise, and we're going to start to learn about how our breath, what appropriate breath is in the body, and how to facilitate that, and how to make it work for us, and how to actually use it to help train our pelvic floor. So let's just start by putting our hands on a rib cage for a moment. Put your fingers across the front of the ribs, and your kind of thumbs maybe or to the sides, the lateral part of your rib cage. And let's have everybody just take a nice inhale. So let's inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Again, inhale through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. Hi, ladies. Are you here for the pelvic floor class, or are you just here for the event? Okay, you can go to the front door, yep, and check in through there. Yes, thank you for coming. All right, so let's do a few more just like that. So hopefully as you're breathing in, you should feel your ribs expand to the sides of the room. And then exhale. Imagine you're also laying in sand right now. And I want you to think about inhaling and letting the back of your ribs imprint into the floor. So you're actually getting the full expansion all the way into the back of the lower part of the ribs. Breathe all the way into the back as deep as you can, inhaling into the floor. And exhale. Good. So if you're not used to your ribs expanding with an inhalation, this is where you need to start. Honestly, that was a challenge for me. I think I was an athlete for so long. I breathed all up in here in my collarbone for like my whole life. Because I would always run and I would, and I think that was just my tension, you know? I never actually brought my breath down and coordinated my diaphragm with my breathing. So let's take it a little deeper. Let's take our hands down to our hip bones. So you can just put your hands around your hips. And what you're gonna do is just wrap your thumbs behind and the fingers in front, and feel the boniest part of your hip. It should be kind of pointing up towards the ceiling. And that right there is the very tip of the innominate We also call that the ASIS. And I want you to keep your two fingers, your pointer and your middle finger on those. And as you inhale, what I want you to imagine is that they're spreading apart to the sides of the room. So let's inhale and spread them apart. And then exhale, don't force them close, but just let them gently close. Let them soften and just fall back to place. Again, inhale and expand through the hips in the front. And then exhale, soften and let them come back to place. Good. Let's do one more just like that. Inhale, expanding across from the front of the hips. And exhale, soften. Nice. Let's take it down a little bit further. Let's create a heart shape with our hands so that the thumbs are together, the fingers are down, pointing towards the pubic bone. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to use our tips of our fingers to just kind of, give some awareness of where our pubic bone is. And I want you to breathe down towards the tips of the fingers. So same thing, keep the ribs expanding, keep the hips expanding, but we're taking it deeper towards the pubic bone. Inhale and think of breathing into the fingers. Exhale and soften. I can't see the time. I just want to keep awareness of where are we at. Is it 9 what? Okay, great, 9:30. Thank you. I just want to kind of know where we're starting. Let's do that a couple more times. Inhaling into the fingertips and then exhale. And again, inhale into the fingertips and exhale. All right, we're gonna go down a little bit deeper. Let's bring that breath all the way into the pelvic floor. Slide your hands to the sides of the hips. And I want you to take your fingertips and reach underneath, kind of not on the back side, but where your thighs kind of meet your bottom. And I want you to take your tips of your finger point and feel if you can find what we call your sit bones. So it should be, when you're on your back, it should be these bony things kind of pointing at the wall that is where your feet are pointing to. And you should feel kind of some bony prominences. Is what we, in our layman terms in Pilates, we often call your sit bones, but they're also, the fancy term would be your ischial tuberosities, or your bum. All right, so if you can get to those bones, or the whereabouts of the bones, this is the area that your pelvic floor is attaching to the sides, okay? So these ischial tuberosities, this is where that hammock is attached to on both sides. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna use those fingertips to draw our breath as deep as we can into those bones. And as we inhale, you might guess, we want them to expand. Okay, so that expansion is going to create the same mimicking of the rib cage to diaphragm of expanding with the inhalation. So let's do a few together. Let's inhale and think of expanding those sit bones. Exhale, let them soften back into place. Nothing should change. Our lower back isn't changing. Our spine isn't changing. We're simply using the breath to draw into the sit bones and then exhale back to the center. Now let's keep the hands there, but let's bring the awareness to bring the breath from the chest down into the ribs. Let's expand everything together. Let's let the ribs open, the hips open, and the pelvic floor open all together. So all three areas, inhaling and exhaling. Take it at your pace. This would be a great thing to wake up and do in the morning, just to get your day started. Talk to your pelvic floor. Thank God for your pelvic floor. Nice. All right, so let's just have everybody do one more, and then we're going to take our hands off of our sit bones, and we're just going to place them to the sides of the mat, sides of us. All right. So we're going to do a little exercise here for the pelvic floor. This is an exercise we call the pelvic clock, and it's a real basic exercise, but it's amazing for toning the pelvic floor. Excellent. It's like the first thing I give all my pregnant mamas who just had their babies. So this is a great thing to do, even if they're having bleeding or they're literally feeling they can't get out of bed. This is just a simple thing they can actually start doing to activate the pelvic floor. We're going to imagine that you have a clock on your belly. So the 12 o'clock is your navel, and the 6 o'clock is your pubic bone. And then your 3 and your 9 are going to be those hip bones that we had those fingertips on earlier. Okay? Now I take imaginary marble and I'm going to drop it into the middle of your clock. Now we want to roll that marble around the clock. So we're going to start by rolling it to 12 o'clock. Let's take that marble. Let's go ahead and round our back into the mat. Feel yourself kind of rolling your pelvis towards you. And you should feel your nose space. You're completely flat. You've lost your curve in your lower back. This is 12 o'clock. Let's go to the opposite direction. Let's roll our pelvis so that we have that marble going towards our pubic bone. You should feel a very large arch happening in your lower back. Let's add a breath here. Exhale, take that marble to 12. Inhale, take it to 6. Exhale, take it to 12. Good. Inhale, take it to 6. Now keep going through that range of motion. Exhale to 12, inhale to 6. Remember our cueing from our breath. Take some awareness. Are you gripping in your pelvic floor? Or are you relaxed and allowing it to expand with the inhale and then letting it settle back in as you exhale and go into your 12 o'clock? So think about what's happening there. Really coordinate with this rocking motion, your inhalation and your exhalation. What we're doing right now is we're expanding the diaphragm, so that's giving tone, but we're also now rocking the diaphragm. And so we're creating some lengthening from the coccyx, the area of the tailbone. We're creating length between that and the other attachments of the pelvic floor up towards the front of the pubic ramus. Good. Let's have everybody just do one more. Now let's take it to a circle. So go to your 12, and then I want you to roll it to your 3 o'clock. And then roll it down to 6. Roll it back up around to 9, and finish off at 12. As you do this, you might feel your knees kind of going. Think about the knees staying as best as you can towards the ceiling. And make sure that that circular pattern is happening just in the lower back and in the hips. Let's add the breath here. So as you roll into your 12 o'clock, exhale. As you roll to your 6 o'clock, inhale. Coordinate using the diaphragm and the pelvic floor together. Exhale into the 12, inhale towards the 6. Let's reverse your clock. So now go in the opposite direction, taking it towards the 9, back to the 12. I like to think of this as you're going around as if like you had a bowl or something, and you're trying to get the rim of the bowl to touch all the edges of the floor. And we don't want to skip any part of the bowl. And we actually really want to just see what areas are stiff and what areas are more loose. And maybe we'll work into those stiffer areas more as you practice this on your own. Go ahead and come back to your 12 o'clock. Let's have everybody finish off at 12. And let's rock between 12 and 6 just a little bit. And I want you to find what we call in the Pilates world, your neutral spine or your optimal spine. What that means is that you're not tucked all the way to 12 and you're not arched all the way to 6, but you're somewhere in the middle. And you should feel like a little breath of air in the lower back. And you should feel just as if you're naturally in your natural curve for your lumbar spine, okay? So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna check our alignment. Because sometimes we might feel like we have this, nice posture, but then when we check ourselves, it's like, whoa, I'm a little bit off. So this is what ideally, and not everybody has to be there perfectly, but what we're shooting for, let's go ahead and grab the hip bones a little bit with our fingertips, and then slide our fingers down towards the pubic bone. Leave the heels of your hands kind of on your hip bones. What we're looking for is that little heart shape is parallel to the floor. What that does is it creates a nice alignment between my pubic bone here and my hip bones. So if I was to slice from my hip, this is a little stiff spine. You don't want your spine to look like this. But these little bones here are the hip bones. This is the pubic bone. What I'm looking for is that if I'm looking at the side, I can look straight across and these hip bones are gonna run right along with my pubic bone. If my pubic bone goes forward like this, let's say my pubic bone goes forward. Here's my pubic bone. Here's my hip bones. Do you see what that does to my back? Do you see how it flattened out my curve? People stand like this all day long and don't even realize it. Pregnant women stand like this all day long because the baby's so heavy, they do this all day. And then they give the birth to the baby and they stay like this. And they grip. That's a lot of pressure on your low back. That's a lot of pressure on pelvic floor, okay? So what we're looking for is that you can feel this position here, and I'll just kind of lift up so I'm looking for my hip bones and my pubic bone to kind of line up. And what that does also is it brings the bladder out right on top of the pubic bone. As I start to tuck, my bladder has to stay supported inside of a cavity without any bony support. As soon as I do this, the bladder comes up and lifts. It also lifts my tailbone where some of the attachments are for the colon. So it lifts the colon as well, because you can have a prolapse in your colon as well. So this is where we want to live when we're walking, when we're sitting, when we're, if you're going to relax and hang out on your couch, you don't have to be like, ee! That's not the goal. But dynamically throughout your day, if we're hanging out in this, that's a long time of hanging on those connective tissues. And over time, you're not giving the best support to your pelvic floor. So this is what the alignment we're looking for. So what we're gonna do is now we're gonna challenge the body to actually stay there. All right, so let's start by just you can leave your fingertips on your hip bones or in that heart position to just see what happens as we start moving the legs. So let's start with our left leg and just simply open it out to the side of you like a book. And then close it back to the center. And keep doing that same left side, opening and closing. Let's add a breath to it. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. So what we're looking for is your little hip bones, imagine like they're seesaws. And I want to keep those seesaws nice and level. I don't want to have my seesaws back and forth, back and forth. What I'm trying to do is I'm creating stability and I'm working and toning the muscles to keep my pelvis stable. And I'm just challenging it with a little motion. Let's go to the opposite leg. So let's take the right leg now. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Nice and slow. Inhale, open. Exhale, closed. Imagine those hip bones are like headlights. Keep going on that right side a couple more times. And those headlights are pointing to the ceiling. I want those headlights staying perfectly still. Let's alternate left and right. Inhale to open on one side, exhale, close, and then switch to the opposite side. Keep alternating back and forth. Try not to hit your partner with your legs. Coordinate with your neighbor. So what we're looking for is that transverse abdominis is going to start firing to keep those hip bones steady. I like to imagine if I'm moving my right side and I'm opening on the right leg, that my left hip is nice and firm and heavy, almost like a weight. And then I'll think about the same on the opposite. I'll think about being heavy on my opposite hip bone. When you think of being heavy in the hip bones in this particular exercise, it automatically fires transverse abdominis and multifidi nicely. And then the breath is expanding and contracting the diaphragms. Good. Let's take it up a little bit. Let's take our left knee now and bring it to a position we call tabletop. So your left knee is going to be stacked right on top of the left hip, and your foot's in line with the knee. We call it tabletop because I could come over and have a little snack right there on your leg. If your leg starts to drop, then your snack falls to the floor. So kind of keep that nice and level. Now let's put that leg down and let's bring up the opposite leg. Good. Now check your seesaw and let's lower that leg down and keep that seesaw nice and level as you lift up the opposite leg. So just keep alternating lifting and lowering. Let's add a breath. Inhale to lift up. Exhale to lower. Nice job, everybody. Keep everything nice and level. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Don't be afraid to breathe loudly. This is a great class for utilizing the deepness of our breathing here. Good. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Keeping that seesaw nice and level on your left and right hip. Using the breath to inhale and expand the pelvic floor. Exhale, let it come back into place. Now let's hold one leg in tabletop. Good. Now take your hands off of the hip bones. Now that we're going to take the training wheels off. Now you have some awareness of what you're shooting for. Keep the hands to the floor. We're going to take a little inhale here. Now exhale and switch the legs. Good. Inhale, exhale, switch the legs. Good. Keep going, alternating. Inhale, then exhale, switch. I'm going to want you guys to just go at your pace. I'm going to give you some cues as you're going through this. Be aware of what's happening in your pelvic floor. Are you bearing down and feeling bulging down there? If you are feeling a lot of bulging and you can't contain that, this may be too advanced for you. You might need to go back to the first one that we just did. If you're not feeling that and you're feeling confident, make sure you're coordinating the breath with the opening of the pelvic floor and then the closing of it with the exhalation. Good, let's just do 2 more here. And then hold one leg in tabletop, doesn't matter which one. We're gonna take that leg, we're gonna reach it out away from the body and then bring it back to tabletop. Good, inhale and then exhale, take it out away. Inhale, draw it in. Think of the expansion of the sit bones as you draw it in. Inhale in, exhale, press. Inhale in, exhale, press. Keeping that lower back in that nice neutral spine. Let's do 2 more here. Exhale out, inhale in. Exhale out, inhale in. Bring it back to tabletop. Take an inhale, exhale to switch to the other side. And the same thing here. Inhale, exhale, take it out. Inhale, back into tabletop. Exhale, take it out. Good. Inhale into tabletop. Watch that lower back, that you're keeping it in that neutral spine. Keep the heel nice and lifted in line with the knee. Exhale out, inhale in. Good. Let's have everybody do 2 more on this side. Good, now bring both legs back to tabletop. Bring the opposite leg up. Stack the knees right on top of the hips. Good, keep the hands into the floor. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open the knees. We're gonna inhale, try not to smack your neighbor. Inhale, open the knees. Exhale, close. Good, use your knowledge of your pelvic floor breath. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. No tucking here. We want to just use the pelvic floor and the inner thighs to work together. Inhale to open, exhale to close. Temptation sometimes is to use our glutes and to kind of use our momentum of our back. And that overcompensates for the pelvic floor work that we want to do here. And in our daily life, we tend to use big muscles to do the little things that the pelvic floor should be doing. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. 2 more times. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Good. Now we're going to hold it here. Bring the knees back to the center over the tabletop. We're going to lower one leg just to touch the floor as if you were touching a little hot stove, and bring it right back up. Exhale, touch. Inhale, up. Exhale, touch. Inhale, up. Exhale, touch. Inhale, up. Take some awareness. Are you bearing down? Are you feeling too bulgy down there? If you are, go back to one of the levels that we just did before. Otherwise, use the breath and use the coordination of inhale and exhale, and make sure you're still maintaining that neutral spine. 2 more times on each side. Exhale down, inhale up. And then we'll have you go ahead and just bring your knees to your chest. Give your legs a hug. Relax that lower back. Nice. Good job, everybody. So that's just kind of a basic series that we do a lot just to start the day with our postnatal class. And we incorporate a lot of these exercises into our regular mat classes at Whole Pilates because honestly, they're great exercises for everyone, men and women alike. We're going to put our feet back to the starting position that we were in earlier. And we're going to add in, so we just worked mainly on stability, stabilizing the lower back, working on the strength of the multifidi, working on this transverse abdominis. But as we talked about before, we want to have good alignment. And good alignment involves the ribs right on top of the pelvis, okay? In your position that you're laying here, the ground is actually making you in good alignment because the back of the head is now in line with the back of the shoulders. But so often we stand up and all of a sudden the head's way forward here, the bum starts tucking under and we start doing wonky things. So I just want you guys to feel this for a moment. Not too many of us lay flat on a hard ground, and we just don't want to be afraid of that. And this is a great place to just learn about your posture and to learn about where we need to be and to feel that lower back in that nice neutral arch. What we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise here called the bridge. And the bridge is one of my favorite exercises because what it does is it loosens up stiff areas in the spine that can keep us in kind of stuck posture patterns that aren't healthy for us. And what it does is just kind of gives our spine a nice little massage and then helps us to find that good alignment a little bit easier. So let's leave the hands to the sides. Let's keep our grapefruit in between our knees and in between our ankles. Let's take a nice little inhale here. We're going to exhale, we're going to peel up through our navel into that 12 o'clock position, and then we're going to start to peel the rest of the spine all the way up to the shoulders. Take an inhale here, and then exhale, start to peel it down, nice and slow and controlled. Inhale at the bottom. Exhale, peel it up. Nice and slow and controlled. Let's have everybody do 2 more times. On this next one, you're going to come up and hold. Everybody holding the bridge here. Press the arms into the floor. Extend your right leg out. Hold it here. Good. Bring it back underneath of you. Extend the opposite leg out. Exhale, hold. Inhale, draw it in. Exhale the opposite leg out. Inhale in. Exhale out. Inhale in. One more time on each side. Exhale, keeping the hips lifted into that nice lifted bridge. Try not to sink. Once you've done the other side, hold it here for the bridge. Both legs are on the floor. Nice lifted bridge. Take an inhale. Now exhale, roll it through the spine. Nice and slow and controlled from the top all the way down. And try to get right back into that nice alignment. Nice, ladies. All right, let's go ahead and have you guys flip onto your tummies. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes. Unfortunately, we can only fit so much in the class. This is just a preview. If you guys want to do more, you can always come to one of our classes on Saturdays or check our schedule through the week. Let's start by just putting the hands on top of each other and the forehead right on top of the back of the hands. All right, so we're going to work a little bit into the mobility of the body. We're going to start by pressing the hands into the forehead and the hands and the head into the hands. So they're meeting the pressure. So your head's pushing down, but your hands are pushing back. Feel that connection there. Think about energy running out through your elbows. And we're going to support our lower back by just a gentle lift in our lower transverse abdominis area. So beneath the belly button, imagine that you're just kind of thinking of your skin lengthening and lifting away from the floor. We don't want to tuck here because we don't want to change the shape of our spine. We're just going to give some gentle activity. Take an inhale here. Now exhale, lift and hover your elbows and bring your head up. Just to hover off of the floor. Keep the eyes looking down towards your mat. Lift everything together. Inhale, back down to the mat. Good. Exhale, bring it back up. You can add the feet if you want, or you can leave the feet flat. Good. Inhale down, exhale up. Inhale down, exhale up. You can float both feet if you want. Feel the energy. Keep the transverse abdominis working underneath that lower back. 2 more times here. Good. Exhale up. Inhale down. Exhale up. Inhale down. Good. Now exhale up and hold. Everybody hold. Hold it and lift. Good. Extend your arms out into a V. We're going to pitter patter up and down. Keep the arms and legs hovering over the floor. Pitter patter like you're playing in water. Let's take a nice breath. Alternating arm movements. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Watch the bearing down. Think of opening through the pelvic floor. Exhale. Alternating arm movements up and down like you're swimming in water. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Last 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale, 2, 3, 4. Bring the arms back to the forehead. Find that starting position and then lower back down to the floor. Good. Let's have everybody go to hands and knees. Press up to your hands and knees. We're going to do a little cat-camel exercise, but I want you to do this. I'm sure you've done this before, but I want you to do it with a focus on pelvic floor. This is a very common exercise. We're gonna have the hands right underneath the shoulders, the knees underneath the hips. We're gonna take an inhale. We're gonna exhale, peel through that tailbone. Go ahead and tuck your tailbone under you. Roll like you're going into the shape of a rainbow and drop your head. Now inhale, but start with your tailbone. Release it to the ceiling and then let it roll your lower back into an arch and lift your head up for the inhale. Good, let's add pelvic floor breath, okay? Exhale, go ahead and let those tailbones tuck under. Pull your pelvic floor up and in. And then inhale, release your pelvic floor. So we're gonna add a little Kegel. If you are gonna do Kegels, this is the place that I tell people to do them. Exhale and imagine you're picking up a piece of paper with your pelvic floor, lifting it up into the pelvic body, and then go ahead and release it like you're spreading a flower, like a flower's opening or something spreading. So exhale, picking up a piece of paper, pulling up into pelvic floor, into the cavity of the pelvic floor, and then inhale, release pelvic floor like it's opening like a flower. This is the Kegel on top of the rocking sensation. So we're activating both deep and superficial layers here. This is the ideal place for pelvic toning, in my opinion. And this would be a great one for a new mother right after having her baby. Let's just do 2 more times. Exhale, pulling up and in, feeling that activity of the pelvic floor, and then inhaling, releasing, activating the eccentric part of the pelvic floor. Nice. All right, let's go ahead and put your feet into the floor and go up right into a downward dog position. So you're just gonna pop your hips up, head's gonna go down, nice long stretch in the hamstrings. Good, take a nice little inhale here. Exhale, walk your hands back to your feet. Hold here, drop your chin and tuck your head. Let's take an inhale. Let's exhale and start to roll it up, stacking the hips right on top of the feet, shoulders on top of the hips, lastly the head. Let's inhale, the arms to the ceiling. Exhale, arms to the floor. We're gonna go right into a squat. Your hands are gonna send right in front of you. You're gonna just go into like you're sitting in a chair. Inhale, squat. Exhale, press it up. Now think about what we've learned with pelvic floor and incorporate that. So inhale, think of pelvic floor opening. Exhale, think of pelvic floor closing. Inhale, send the hips back, shoulders forward. This is a healthy squat, ladies. We shouldn't be gripping our pelvic floor when we go down, okay? We should be opening it and trusting it. Inhale, release. If this is too hard, that means we need to go back to the beginning and train the pelvic floor that it can do this. Let's do one last one together. Inhale. And then exhale. Nice job. Inhale, the arms to the ceiling. And exhale. Stack the shoulders right on top of the ribs, on top of the hips. Keep your weight shifted into the balls of your feet. This is where you should live. All right, ladies. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad I got to share with you guys today. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy all the fun perks and have some fun.